Why public schools and the mainstream media dumb us down. How systems shape our minds. Most people live their whole lives inside a story they didn't write. A story shaped by systems that reward silence, punish curiosity, and trade truth for comfort. In this video, we uncover how education, media, and culture quietly train us to disconnect from our own minds, emotions, and choices. But the moment you begin to notice the script, you can begin to rewrite it. Through critical thinking, emotional honesty, and inner healing, you can reclaim your inner authority. If you've ever felt a quiet unrest, like something essential is missing, this is where your journey begins. Stay with us and rediscover what it means to awaken from within. A warning about obedience. In every era, the line between freedom and control has been drawn not with weapons, but with ideas. Most people do not realize how easily obedience can become a habit, how it creeps into our minds disguised as politeness, discipline, or common sense. We are taught from an early age that obeying authority is good, even noble. But rarely are we encouraged to question who is that authority and what do they truly serve. Obedience without reflection is not peace. It is sleep, and a society that sleeps too deeply forgets how to wake up. The most dangerous chains are not the ones we can see, but the ones we carry in our thinking. The soft voice that says, "Stay quiet." The inner pull that says, "Do not question." These are the beginnings of silence that later becomes collective blindness. This is not a call for chaos. It is a call for awareness. A world that praises obedience too loudly often fears the one who asks why. But asking why is not rebellion. It is the root of wisdom. When we stop asking, we stop growing. And when a people stop growing, they become easier to govern, easier to manipulate, easier to control. Walt Whitman once warned that blind obedience leads to a kind of slavery from which no society easily recovers. And yet we have made obedience our comfort zone. We confuse safety with surrender. We trade clarity for convenience, but the price is high. What we gain in short-term ease, we lose in long-term autonomy. True freedom does not mean doing whatever you want. It means being able to choose with awareness, to see the world clearly and respond with integrity, to honor truth even when it is uncomfortable, to resist not for the sake of resistance, but because something inside you knows this is not right. The question is not whether obedience is necessary. The real question is, when does obedience stop serving life and start serving fear? This line is subtle, but every great decline in history began when people stopped noticing it. Obedience is not the enemy, but unexamined obedience is, and the first step back to clarity is to recognize that freedom, like health, is something we must actively protect. Not in grand gestures, but in small daily choices to think, to feel, to question, and to remember who we really are. A society that has lost its thinking. Once the ability to think critically was seen as a virtue, it was encouraged in schools, praised in public discourse, and honored as a path to wisdom. But today the landscape has shifted. The world moves quickly, and with that speed comes distraction. People are overwhelmed with information but starved for insight. The flood of data has not made us smarter. It has made us dependent on headlines, opinions filtered, news, and curated truths. The result is a society that reacts more than it reflects. When thinking becomes a burden and convenience becomes the goal, questioning fades. We begin to prefer shortcuts to understanding. We trade depth for immediacy and reflection for repetition. In this environment, ideas no longer evolve. They are recycled. People no longer think to discover. They think to confirm, to belong, to avoid friction. This is not a simple problem of education. It is a cultural drift. We have slowly moved away from contemplation toward consumption, from curiosity toward conformity. The loudest voices are often the least nuanced, and the most popular beliefs are often the least examined. The crowd rewards simplicity. Complexity gets ignored. But the cost of this is profound. When a society stops thinking deeply, it becomes fragile. It becomes vulnerable to manipulation, propaganda, and fear-based decisions. It seeks comfort over truth and security over freedom. In such a world, people are not just uninformed, they are uninterested in being informed. And this indifference is more dangerous than ignorance. A healthy society depends on individuals who are willing to pause, to wrestle with uncertainty, to tolerate complexity, and to challenge their own assumptions. It thrives when its people seek understanding, not just agreement. But that kind of society requires courage. Thinking deeply takes effort. It demands time, patience, and discomfort. And so we must ask ourselves, what kind of minds are we cultivating? Minds that memorize or minds that explore? Minds that obey or minds that inquire? The future of any society is shaped by how its people think when no one is watching. If we want a world that is wise, compassionate, and free, then thinking must return to its rightful place. not as a luxury for the few, but as a responsibility for all. Education, a template for obedience. Education is often praised as the foundation of a free and intelligent society. We are taught to see school as a gift, a gateway to opportunity, and a means of progress. But behind the ideals and polished narratives lies a different truth. Much of modern education, particularly in large public systems, is not designed to liberate the mind. It is designed to shape it into something predictable, manageable, and compliant. From the first day a child enters school, a subtle message begins to take hold. Sit still, follow instructions, memorize, repeat, obey. The system does not reward curiosity. It rewards conformity. Original thinking is not punished directly, but it is quietly pushed aside. Students quickly learn that questioning too much creates friction, and friction is not welcomed in institutions that value order over growth. The roots of the system are not accidental. Many modern school systems were modeled on the factory-style education pioneered in 18th century Prussia. The goal was not to inspire creativity, but to produce reliable workers and obedient citizens. The classroom, with its bells, rigid schedules, and hierarchical structure, mirrors the assembly line more than the open field of thought. This approach may produce efficiency, but at a cost. After years within such a system, many students leave school not inspired but exhausted. They do not emerge as independent thinkers. They emerge as individuals trained to seek approval, to avoid mistakes, to follow paths laid out by others. Their natural curiosity, once vibrant, is dulled. Their sense of inner authority often lost. What makes this more complex is that most people never realize it happened. They believe they were educated, but what they received was training in how to pass tests, meet expectations, and fit in. Education in its truest sense, is meant to awaken the self, to help a person connect with their own voice, their own questions, their own capacity to think and feel deeply. When education fails in this task, it creates a citizenry that is well-behaved but disconnected. People who function well within systems but feel lost outside of them. People who know how to follow but not how to choose. This is not a failure of the individual. It is a design of the institution. True education should not be about shaping people into products. It should be about freeing them into persons. Until we understand this difference, we will continue to confuse compliance with intelligence and obedience with wisdom. Media manufacturing illusion. The media was once imagined as a beacon of truth, a protector of the public, a mirror held up to society. But over time, that mirror has cracked. Today, the mainstream media functions less as a guide and more as a filter, deciding not just what to report, but how to shape the reality people believe. The danger does not lie in outright lies. It lies in what is left unsaid, what is repeated endlessly, and what is presented without room for thought. In a world saturated with noise, attention is currency. Stories are no longer told to inform. They are designed to capture, to stir emotion, to divide. Headlines are written for clicks, not clarity. Nuance is lost in the rush for speed. In this chaos, truth becomes a casualty. The deeper concern is not whether the media gets facts wrong. It is that people stop asking whether the facts even matter. This shift has consequences. When people consume information without questioning its source or purpose, they unknowingly surrender their mental independence. They become easy to guide, not because they are weak, but because they are overwhelmed. A mind constantly bombarded with fear, outrage, and urgency loses its ability to reflect. Friedrich Nietzsche once warned that the media can create a false world more convincing than reality itself. This false world does not demand force to control. It requires repetition. Show something often enough with the right tone and emotion, and it becomes truth in the public mind. Not because it is accurate, but because it is familiar. We must also understand who controls the narrative. Media is not neutral. It is shaped by ownership, ideology, and interest. What is excluded is often more revealing than what is shown. Silence can be a form of power, and those who control the silence often control the story. Reclaiming our thinking begins with slowing down, with noticing what we are being told and why, with pausing before reacting, with asking who benefits from this message. Real freedom comes not just from speaking, but from the ability to discern, from choosing what enters our mind and what we leave behind. If we are to see clearly, we must be willing to question even the voices that claim to inform us, especially those voices, because true awareness begins not with trusting more, but with seeing more. And sometimes seeing requires unlearning everything we thought we knew. Cultivating the spirit of critical thinking. Critical thinking is not about being negative or difficult. It is about being awake. In a world flooded with opinions, advertisements, and polished narratives, the ability to think clearly and independently has become one of the most important and most neglected skills. To think critically is not to reject everything. It is to examine carefully, to question respectfully, and to seek understanding beyond appearances. This ability is not something we are born with. It must be cultivated. It begins with curiosity, with the willingness to pause and ask why. Why do I believe this? Why is this being told to me now? What is missing from this picture? Critical thinking is not about finding flaws in others. It is about uncovering truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. In many societies, however, conformity is rewarded more than questioning. We are taught to value agreement over insight, repetition over exploration. This creates a climate where thinking for oneself is seen as a threat rather than a strength. But history shows that progress has always depended on those willing to see differently, those who dared to ask the questions no one else would, those who risked misunderstanding for the sake of truth. Cultivating critical thinking requires space, mental space, emotional space, and sometimes even physical space from the noise. It requires the courage to slow down in a world that pushes us to react. It demands that we listen deeply, not just to others, but to ourselves. Because often the first illusions we must confront are the ones we hold within. It is also important to realize that thinking critically does not mean thinking alone. It means thinking in dialogue with others who are also seeking questioning and growing. It means welcoming disagreement as an opportunity, not a threat. It means choosing the discomfort of learning over the ease of certainty. True critical thinking leads to compassion, not cynicism. It helps us see more clearly, act more wisely, and live more fully. It reminds us that freedom is not just about what we are allowed to do, but about how deeply we understand the world we live in. When we nurture this spirit, we do more than sharpen the mind. We strengthen the soul, honoring the awakened ones. In every generation, there are those who refuse to sleep through life. They are the ones who ask difficult questions, who speak truths that others avoid, who see the cracks beneath the surface of normality. Often they are not welcomed. They are labeled as troublemakers, as radicals, as too intense or too idealistic. But history and time tends to remember them differently, not as rebels but as visionaries, not as threats but as guides. The awakened ones are not perfect. They are not without flaws or pain. What sets them apart is their refusal to numb themselves. They feel deeply, think independently, and live with a fierce commitment to integrity. In a world that rewards silence, they risk being heard. In a culture that values comfort, they dare to disturb. They are not always right, but they are always alive. We often misunderstand these individuals because they challenge what we take for granted. They make us uncomfortable because they refuse to pretend. They remind us of truths we have buried, questions we have avoided, choices we have delayed. And that mirror, though painful, is necessary. Without those who disturb the silence, we might forget that there is something worth waking up for. It is easy to follow the crowd, to echo the popular, to avoid conflict. But the awakened ones take a different path. Not because it is easy, but because their conscience allows nothing less. They are willing to walk alone if truth demands it. They are willing to be rejected if integrity requires it. And in that courage, they open doors for others. If a society punishes its awakened members, it loses its soul. But if it honors them, listens to them, and learns from them, it grows stronger. True progress has never come from blind obedience, but from courageous questioning, from those who could not unsee what they had seen, from those who were awake in a world that preferred sleep. We do not have to agree with everything the awakened ones say, but we must protect their right to speak. We must value their perspective, not because it is always comfortable, but because it is often essential. In honoring them, we honor our own potential to awaken, because the moment we silence the ones who see, we begin to lose our sight as well. Returning to the self, a journey of inner healing. In the noise of the world, it is easy to forget yourself. You begin to live in reaction, in responsibility, in roles that were given to you but never chosen. The deeper your disconnection, the more distant your sense of self becomes. You may continue to function, to smile, to perform, but inside something feels missing. This absence is not weakness. It is a call, a quiet invitation to return. Healing does not always begin in hospitals or with medication. Often it begins in silence, in noticing that you have ignored your own needs for too long, that your body is tired not from age but from absence, that your heart is not broken but buried. Inner healing is the process of returning to what was never truly lost, only forgotten. This journey is not fast. It requires patience, gentleness, and honesty. You cannot rush your way back to yourself. You must sit with those parts of you that were silenced, the memories you avoided, the truths you once feared. This is not an act of indulgence. It is an act of courage, because healing is not about perfection. It is about presence. Returning to the self means listening again. It means paying attention to the soft signals, fatigue, tension, sadness, not to fix them immediately, but to understand their message. Your body is not your enemy. It is a companion that has carried your story even when you forgot to read it. To heal is to listen, and to listen is to remember. The world may tell you to move on, to toughen up, to stay busy. But healing asks you to slow down, to feel, to make space. It invites you to meet yourself again, not as a project to improve, but as a life to honor. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember who you already are. When you return to yourself, you do not become smaller. You become more whole, more rooted, more awake. The noise may still exist, but it no longer controls you. Because in the quiet center of your being, you have found home. And from that place, everything else begins to make sense. Light in the darkness, awakening and rebirth. Awakening does not always come in a flash. Sometimes it arrives slowly, like morning light creeping across a quiet room. It does not shout. It whispers. It does not demand. It invites. The path to awakening is rarely dramatic. It often begins with a question, a pause, a feeling that something in life is out of alignment. That quiet discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is the first spark of truth. Rebirth does not mean becoming someone new. It means returning to what has always been true within you. It means shedding what is not yours, releasing the stories that no longer serve you, and remembering the part of you that never gave up. In the darkness, this light can seem fragile, but it is precisely in the darkest moments that it shines the brightest. Many people wait for external change before they allow inner transformation. But true awakening begins when you stop waiting. When you realize that no one else can grant you clarity, freedom, or peace. These things arise from within, from your own decision to see, to feel, and to live fully. Rebirth is not a single moment. It is a series of choices to begin again, again, and again. You may stumble, you may forget, but each time you return to your truth, you grow stronger. Each time you choose awareness over avoidance, presence over distraction, honesty over comfort, your light expands. This light is not loud. It does not seek attention. It simply glows. And in its glow, others may find their own way, not because you told them where to go, but because you reminded them that there is a path. To awaken is not to escape life. It is to meet life with open eyes and an open heart. It is to walk into the day not armored but aware, not guarded but grounded. The world may not change overnight, but your relationship to it will, and that shift is everything. Because when you change your way of seeing, you change your way of being. This is how the world heals. Not through grand revolutions, but through quiet returns. Through individuals who choose to be present, who choose to remember, who choose to begin again. You are one of them. And in your awakening, you carry the light that helps others remember their own. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be present, to think deeply, feel fully, question bravely, and live truthfully. In a world that asks you to forget, your greatest act of power is to remember. Remember who you are. Remember what matters. And most of all, remember that awakening begins with just one quiet decision: to come back to yourself.